Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. Scott Linden here. Glad you could join me. Hope you're having a good winter. I guess we have to officially call it that now that the guns are put away. But are they? In fact, now is the time to start working on your shooting. We're going to talk a lot about that as part of our podcast today. We'll train your dog for doctoring. Yeah, it does require a little bit of that in the Handle It segment. And our main portion of the program will be devoted to Dr. Quail. I'm calling him Kelly Reyna. Met a few years ago at Pheasant Fest. Have been corresponding televisionally, I guess, for quite a while. Kelly is, among other things, the director of the Ted and Donna Lyon Center for Gamebird Research and a principal investigator at the Quail Research Laboratory at Texas A&amp University in Commerce, Texas. So we're going to learn all about, well, how you can turn pen-reared birds into wild birds, among other things. Kelly's a avid hunter as well, and we'll talk wild birds, what they're doing in that world. We'll talk about all the things that are important to you when it comes to quail hunting. Of all sorts. Yeah, you'll see what I mean when we get to it. And it's all made possible by Sage and Breaker Gun Care products, Pointer shotguns, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TrueLock choke tubes, MidwayUSA.com, Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, LandTrust.com, and of course, everything you hear here can also be found at FindBirdHuntingSpots.com. Well, cleaning guns, setting up some more study time with my clean guns so I can become a better shooter, maybe you too, and getting ready for Pheasant Fest. Aren't you? I hope to see you there. I'll be in the Pointer shotgun booth doing a bunch of podcasts from the floor, so if you're in the neighborhood, please stop by and say hello. Love to talk with you. Take a look at some of those guns while you're there, by the way. All of this got me to thinking about some questions I asked on Facebook and Instagram and, what do we call it now? X, about our shooting challenges. And I confessed, as you well know, that my biggest challenge in shooting is cross-dominance. I've got some thoughts on that, but I was really interested in one of your highest priorities, according to the Upland Nation Index, that survey every year. And sure enough, some of your answers were fascinating, but lots of answers, so I know it's a high priority. Harry Hill says his biggest problem shooting is hitting birds. Yeah, I can't help you with that one, but maybe some of the other things we're going to hear and say today would be of use to you. Randy Gazda says mounting the gun consistently. Randy, I'll tell you, I've learned so much about that in particular. Slow down. Yeah, even in the field, but especially when you're practicing. Slow down. David Serdar, shooting at a dropping target. Yeah, that's a tough one. And the biggest challenge there is keeping your face against the gun stock, and that's all I'm doing. When I practice at the range, if I can't reset a thrower, I'm shooting those bounding rabbit targets. They're the closest thing most ranges have to that, although some you can get up on a stand, an elevated stand, and shoot down. The other thing I found is that little, I call it a demi-step forward with your forward foot. That helps you get your face down into the stock. Amanda Ponte, quick mount. Yeah, slow down. Oh, yeah. Let's see here. Bill Vicia, I think that's how I'm pronouncing it. Sure footing while approaching the flush is a coin toss. I get it. And again, I think that's really important. There's only about 4 things that I think are really important, at least to a slow thinker like me. And one of them is the right foot position and walking forward in the right way. Again, that little demi-step might help a little bit as well. Eric Kopang lifts his face from the stock. Eric, you say just when you're shooting right to left crossers. It's my problem all the time. And the only way to work on that, I think, is I did a video that might help you. Go to the YouTube channel and take a look. It'll cost you a $20 bill. But if you do it right, you won't lose that 20. It's all about keeping your face on the stock, and there's an incentive for you. PD Jacket, yeah. I have friends who insist on pronouncing their name Jacket, others Jacquet, but I'm just going to guess, PD, that you're Jacket. Anyway, gun fit. If you're a little bit different than everybody else, and I don't care what you are, taller, shorter, wider, thinner, gun fit does become more of a critical factor. Finding a left-handed gun for George Cummins. Yeah, I'm just glad you can mount a gun altogether, George, after the challenges you faced. Mike Gandolfo, stopping the gun swing. Yeah. There are so many in there. Cross dominance when you're tired, Hugh Snyder. There are two ways to deal with that. Two simple ways, at least. One is to try and wink or squint your dominant eye. I just can't remember to do it, so I put that little patch over my eye on my shooting glasses. That helps a lot. And Dan Costame, this one I haven't heard before. It's fascinating. If you were a target shooter, a rifle shooter, for example, or even a handgun shooter, aiming for that bullseye, aiming is the key there. That probably is a bit of a challenge to make the switch from aiming to pointing. So many great, number one, confessions. We all shoot as, more poorly than we want, but lots of good suggestions anymore. On this one, Jim Hayes says, I can't focus. I'd rather watch the dogs. And also he's worked through that. He's at step number 4 in the 12-step program. He's also fine with missing a bird. If that's the reason, I'm with you 100%, Jim. Hey, much more over there, and there's always a good question for you at all of our social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, X, and Instagram. So check them out, answer the questions yourself. You might hear your name on the podcast. And the Upland Nation podcast is brought to you in part by Purina, ProPlansport.com. Yeah, learn more about the extent, the industry, the most extensive nutritional research for performance dogs like ours. And as I've pointed out before, there's a reason every dog food manufacturer is finally getting in line behind Purina on the correct proportion of protein and fat. 30% protein, 20% fat. That is the mix that creates the chemistry that generates omega-3 fatty acids and also the DHA for brain and vision health. That is the right mix to fuel the metabolic needs and maintain lean muscle in performance dogs like your dog and your dog. Oh, and you too, even if you have 3 or 4 of them. Learn more at ProPlansport.com. All this talk about shooting straight, it does start with a gun you have confidence in, and that's why every pointer shotgun comes with a 7-year warranty. I bring that up because, believe it or not, a lot of companies don't have a warranty that long. Let's hope you never have to use it, but if you do, you will get taken care of for 7 full years. PointerShotguns.com is where you learn all about every style from side-by-side to over and under, if your eyes are on top of each other, or semi-automatic. It's all there in various color combinations, youth guns, and everything else. PointerShotguns.com. Well, this one has been a long time coming as well. Seems like I'm doing a lot of those this season. Anyway, I'm glad to welcome to the Upland Nation podcast a guy I met a few years back at Pheasant Fest and sure enjoyed it and have been meaning to get in touch with him again since. Kelly Reyna is the director of the Ted and Donna Lyon Center for Gamebird Research. That's at Texas A&amp University in Commerce. He's also the principal investigator of the Quail Research Laboratory. So Kelly, welcome to the show. And do you get to wear a badge like Columbo?
Yeah, Scott, with all that title, you'd think it'd weigh me down.
The principal investigator and all that. Wow.
Somebody's got to look after these quail.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. But you have got such a fascinating background, and you came to this world. Well, maybe like a lot of us, via several strange routes, I could call it. You spent time on a submarine?
That's right. And the first thing I got to just tell to all your listeners is there's no quail on a submarine. And that's why I got out of there just as quick as I could.
Which wasn't that quick now that I think about it, but more power to you.
I did 9 tours on the USS Kentucky, and they call that the thoroughbred of the fleet.
Oh, I love it. That's hilarious. Was that an LA class, or was that one of those black ones that we're not allowed to know about?
Oh, yeah, it's secret. It's Ohio class and a big boomer. So we had 24 missiles on there, and each one has a lot of warheads.
Well, enough about that. I mean, they did fly, but you never flushed any of those during your tours, I hope.
That's right. No, we kept those all to ourselves.
Good. I appreciate that. When we first talked, you were doing something fascinating, and I want to allude to it now, and then we'll get deeper into it as well. But you were talking about how you were working on trying to turn pen-raised quail into more, trying to help them become more wild in some fascinating ways. And that just intrigued me enough right there. But when we talked a day or two ago, there were all sorts of other things you were doing. Why don't you give us the overview first off of what your goal is and what you're working on?
Oh, you bet. Well, at the Ted and Donna Lyon Center for Gamebird Research here, our goal is to discover solutions for sustainable gamebird populations. So we work on quail, and we work on grouse and pheasants and all the great game birds that we love to hunt across the nation. And one thing that we found with quail, of course, is especially bobwhite quail, those numbers are declining. And so we're working hard to restore those, not only across the state of Texas, but we're working really from California all the way down to Kansas, and then down into Texas, working on all quail species across the United States. So we do research from the embryo. We have a wet lab here. That kind of sets us apart from other research entities. We look at how quail develop. We take field conditions, recreate them in the lab, and then see how quail develop. And then we're able to make some adjustments and implement solutions into the research stations that we have out in the wild. And we do all this just to have more wild birds, because like probably all of your listeners, and I know me and you for sure, we want more wild birds out on the landscape.
Well, it's fascinating to see that end of the transaction. You and I are out in the wild, and so are many of our listeners. We're out seeing that part of it, but we don't understand that even before that, the improvements all happen out there. They got to happen in a lab of some sort. What are some of the things you're doing out there that are leading, and what kind of discoveries are you making that are notable for us?
Well, out in the field, one thing we have been asked about a lot is there's something that a farmer or rancher is doing that is causing detriment to the quail populations. And specifically, they were talking about herbicides and pesticides and things of that nature. And with the recent popularity of like neonicotinoid pesticides, we started looking at pesticide impacts on bobwhite quail development. And you would not believe the results. We just at the normal rates of pesticide applications, we were getting beakless quail, a lot of leg problems. We even produced a cyclops quail, which, that's all fun and to talk about and everything. But the bottom line was that, these pesticides, when sprayed on the eggs at normal application, like if you're doing an aerial spray during the spring season, that's going to produce a quail that just doesn't have what it takes to survive in the wild. So that was a pretty fascinating result. Another thing that we're looking at cattle ranching. So in Texas, it's cattle country. If you come to Texas, you're going to have steak and brisket, probably one of your first couple of meals, and boy, is it good. And so agriculture in Texas is really big, and it works. We produce a lot of beef and feed a lot of people. But one thing that has suffered during that is quail populations. And so it's a battle for grass in the spring. The cattle want that grass, and so do the quail. They need to hide from those hawks and those other predators in that grass to survive, and also use it as nesting cover. And so what we found, obviously, was if you overgraze and you take down this habitat that the quail need, you have less quail in that area. So we thought, well, how can we partner with ranchers to solve this problem? So we created this thing called grazing around the bobwhite life cycle. And it's pretty simple. You leave your nesting habitat up there, that grass that'll hit you in the back of the knees or maybe even the back of the thighs on a good ranch. You leave that out there until after the nesting season, then you could graze it down and it starts to grow back, after you turn it into beef. And same with brooding habitat. You leave it out there and graze it down later. And all you really do is just look at the life history of that quail, implement it to your grazing regime, and, pretty fascinating. You end up having to need more cattle to do that because it's pretty hard to graze all that country, in that kind of rotational grazing fashion. So they end up making more money on cattle and certainly have more quail. And to me, that's just win-win.
Well, that is almost a forehead slapper. Why didn't somebody think of that before?
I know, it seems so simple, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, we have, I'm in cattle country too out here, and we have people doing rotational grazing, but it's not game bird oriented. It's for usually for water quality or water conservation. But boy, those kind of things, you just don't think about them until we talk to somebody like you.
And then you say, wow, that makes all the sense in the world.
It does, yeah.
One neat thing is it's pretty simple to adjust a rotational grazing regime. Just to implement it, you just plant it around the bobwhites or plant it around valley quail or, the quail that's in that region. And man, can you make a difference in habitat.
Kelly Reyna, you've got more initials after your name than anybody deserves. I think you have at least 3, maybe 4 or more academic degrees of one sort, and that's before we talk about nuclear missiles. But you also are an avid bird hunter, and we've hunted some of the same spots. We talked about Norton, Kansas a while ago. What is it you love so much about bird hunting?
Well, I got to tell you, I got hooked at a young age. So we had just a small 5-acre kind of just a weekend place. We just go camp out there with my family. And one of the things that my dad would do is he'd hand me a 410 and he'd say, go have some fun, and we would hunt rabbits mainly. But we hunted all kinds of things out there. And one day I was hunting with my dad when just all of a sudden, boom, I'm telling you, Scott, the ground erupted below me. I squeezed my eyes so tight I could only see white. And I just remember thinking I stepped on a landmine or a rattlesnake or something like that. I had no idea. I didn't even know if I was alive. And I looked up at my dad, and he was laughing just like you are now. And he said, those were quail. And I was like, quail? Oh, my gosh, I'm hooked on quail.
Oh, that's great.
I've been hooked on them ever since. It was so exhilarating. And when I learned you could shoot them, and they taste so good, that I thought, well, I'm a quail hunter. And, I was 10 and a half by that age. I was like, I'm really into this. And so every waking moment, I would try to go out there and hunt quail. When I learned there were seasons, like, oh, you can't hunt after February. I thought, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And of course, I think it's smart now. But, oh, my gosh, I got hooked on bird hunting early, and I just love it. You don't sit in a stand or, there's always something good. And then one of the biggest benefits I found of it is, I got to take my friends hunting and my family hunting.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
in high school, instead of, going and doing the normal high school things, oh, we couldn't wait for the weekends. And we would hop in our cars or trucks or whatever we could do. We'd all pile out there, sleep in a tent, and go hunting, and that just set me off in that hunting trajectory all the way up until today, where
Look at
many
that.
many years later.
I love it. Here are two takeaways from that statement. First off, how many times is somebody in the 21st century going to hand a kid a gun and say, go have fun?
That's right. Doesn't happen anymore.
And second, you shoot just like me. The birds get up and you close your eyes.
That's right. Oh my gosh. And I'll tell you this just added story. I don't know that it'll ever get old for me. And I say that because here I am, I'm over 50 years old now, and I have graduate students that I take out into the wild. And there'll be days when we're driving across a ranch doing quail research, and I'll go, oh my gosh, look over there. I'll put the truck in park and I'll start running towards, an area. They go, what is that guy doing? I go, it's quail. And they're like, what? You get that excited over quail? How many have you seen? Thousands and thousands and thousands. And it's still that exhilarating for me. And I can't wait to show that to everybody I come in contact with. And I think that's, why I'm in this position and why we get so excited and why we are able to be successful, just because we're so passionate about it.
Yeah. If you ever lose that, it's time to become an administrator. No offense. If you're a college administrator, that was all in jest. Okay, I'm winking right now. You can't hear that. I'll have to come up with a signal for that. But speaking of administration, you were just touring one of the big bosses over there. You're going to have a new facility real soon.
That's right. One of the things you were talking about earlier is just looking at the difference between pin-reared birds and wild birds. And as we mentioned, we found a significant difference between those two birds and, wild and pin-reared birds in their predator avoidance behavior. And we think we can do something about it. We think we can train pin-reared birds to have wild predator avoidance behavior and increase their survival. So when the state of Texas heard about this, they said, what do you need?
Wow.
And I wish we would ask for more. But we did receive funding to build a super quail production facility. So that is basically a quail production facility and our behavioral training unit. And so we are thrilled. We've been designing it all year, and we break ground in February, and construction should be completed in about a year and a half. And all that is part of the Ted and Donna Lyon Center for Gamebird Research, which will also be a Quail Research Laboratory and a education building. And one of the things I'm most excited about will be a Quail interactive experience where community members or anybody that comes to this area can go hold quail, see quail, feed quail, and potentially have that same experience that I had when I was 10 years old. Come in there, interact with the quail, hopefully it makes a difference in their life. But we create a new enthusiast or hunter.
But you will never say, here's a shotgun, go have some fun.
That's right. Yeah.
Not there, at least. So what intrigued me when we first talked several years back was that super quail program. And I just want to walk through something. You check me on this. You grade papers every day, so grade me on this. So as you said, whether it's Texas or anywhere else, we got, the quail population decline is 80% since the 60s in Texas. And it's the same in many, many areas, especially with bobwhites.
That's right.
So we got fewer quail. The ways to increase that population are rather limited. Well, we can hope to acquire enough habitat and manage it correctly, or we can put birds out and hope they survive. Are there any other choices?
Well, you hit on the two keys, build it and they will come is the mantra. And, certainly that's a good mantra, and habitat has to be present. But where there is habitat and the nearest birds are 25, 100 miles away, they're just not coming. And so the option there is to go down to your local breeder, buy some birds for $5 to $10 and release them. And those birds live about 2 weeks.
Wow.
Some will make it 2 months. And, you hear on rare occasion, where people have Johnny houses and all these things. They go, oh, I got some birds from last year. And so, but it's a rare occurrence.
Sure.
And so, you have birds with a 2-week lifespan on average, those pinrid birds. The other option is translocation. So you go to, hey, we got called that there was a quail nuisance area in Idaho.
What?
I'm telling the truth.
Wow. Okay. No, wait a minute. Off the air. I want the latitude and the longitude.
I'll text it to you. But there's places where there's a lot of quail still, and so we'll call that high density areas. You go trap birds in that high density area, move them to a low density area, to a no density area, where there's no quail. And so that translocation, but that can cost up to $1,000 a bird. So it's really cost prohibitive.
Oh my God.
I know. So you got $10 to $1,000. Which one do you think most people are going to pick? The first one, $10, they last 2 weeks. The $1,000 lasts 2 months. And so, 2 months is pretty good. Average lifespan of a quail is 6 months. So you're getting there. But we just thought that's not good options. We want to give another option that's, not cost prohibitive, but has the same survivability of a wild bird translocated. We need to get them to at least two months or more survival, so we can get them into the breeding season.
Yeah, and everybody has an anecdote or knows somebody who has an anecdote about exactly that. Well, I put out 100 roosters last year and a bunch of hens, and we got some hatches out of some of those hens, the survivors. So it really becomes a numbers game, doesn't it?
It really does. We have studied this so much because we wanted to get it right. And so we heard all these anecdotes about pinrid birds that they won't breed with wild birds. Well, we did a study and found out they do. We saw that they won't just start eating natural food.
Sure.
Well, we release birds, and while 1 foot is in the box and the head was out of the box, they were stripping the aphids off grass. So we thought, well, that's certainly a myth,
Wow.
And we did a study and found out that wasn't true. And just about everything we're able to check the box, genetics are bad, or that wasn't true. The health was bad. Well, you wouldn't be in business as a producer if the pinrid birds had bad health, And so we just started checking all those boxes. And what we found out was the only big difference between a wild bird and a pinrid bird, the main difference was predator avoidance behavior. And that was, I think you saw some of the videos, but that was a pretty neat experiment.
I want to describe that. I want you to help me with it in a moment. You're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. That's Kelly Reyna. He's a principal investigator at the Quail Research Laboratory at Texas A&M University in Commerce, Texas. And the guy knows of what he speaks. And Kelly, why don't you just describe what I saw in that video and then describe what you're learning about these birds that were raised in a pen versus wild raised birds and their behavior.
Yeah, so sometimes in our laboratory we play Stump the Professor, and really what we're trying to do is use actual science to get a good project. So we'll pull up we'll say a good project, and then we'll all try to shoot it down. And if we can't shoot it down, then that's a pretty good project or a pretty good idea. And when we were trying to find the difference between pinrid birds and wild birds, ultimately so that we can have more wild birds and more hunting available for people, what we came down with is just pinrid birds get eaten faster. And that's the only thing we weren't able to shoot down.
Yeah.
Pinrid birds get eaten faster. And so we said, why is that? That's pretty weird. And so, of course, you go on online or you look through the scientific literature to find that answer, and it's just not there. So we developed a test simulator. And this is what the video was that you're talking about. And we created a pen. And in that pen, we had a simulated hawk attack. So imagine a wooden hawk silhouette coming and attacking some quail that are eating in the middle of this pen. And then we needed a predator, like a mammalian predator that would attack these quail. So we came down, we had lots of ideas on this one, but we covered a remote control car in fur and drove that towards the quail to simulate a mammalian attack. And we recorded we recorded that video to see the result. What we thought would happen was that the pinred birds would, be more reminiscent of a kick and shoot, right?
Yeah. They wouldn't react.
Yeah. Here comes the hawk slinging down. And we thought the pinred birds might kind of look at it and back their heads up and go, what the heck was that? And let it go by and then keep eating. Just totally clueless is what we thought. And then we thought the wild birds would be real savvy. And as soon as they saw that predator, they would take off flying and get the heck out of there. Because when we buy pinred birds, we want them flight ready. We want them flying. So we thought wild birds would fly right away. But what we saw was just the exact opposite. Those pinred birds could identify that predator quicker and respond quicker. And we think that's due to the way they're raised. They would see that predator and they would fly away just immediately. Aerial attacks and mammalian attacks, boom, those birds were gone. Now, wild birds did exactly the opposite and just not what we thought was going to happen. And what wild birds do is they get flat and they hold and they turn their camouflage, which is on the back of their body mainly. Mm-hmm. The sexual attractant, the pretty stuff's on the front, but that camouflage is on the back. Back and wings, they would turn that back towards the predator and get flat. I'm telling you, about 1.5 inches on the ground maximum.
Wow.
And they would just wait for the predator to go right on by. Now, we saw the videos, you and I did. We did 100 pinred birds, 100 wild birds that we trapped and ran through the simulator, and it was just very consistent. And we published papers on this, so you can look it up. But it makes all the sense in the world now, doesn't it? Because that's why when our that's why we have bird dogs, first of all. Mm-hmm. And then because those birds hold. And so those dogs have to find them in the grass, and they don't fly right away. They're running, and we say, oh, that dog's getting birdie. And then when the dog doesn't find the bird, we go, oh, your dog's no good. But really, that dog's good. It found that quail. That quail just got real small, stopped putting out scent, and is hiding from that predator, right?
Yeah.
And we go right on by, and that's by design or by, nature. And then, we just found that to be fascinating, and then it made all the sense in the world. That's why we have dogs. That's why we flush, they don't flush until right at the end when we've got them cornered and they have no other place to go. It was just fascinating results, I thought.
Well, and we keep hearing about that, whether it's even rough grouse, but rooster pheasants, of course, everybody talks about them being reluctant to fly, and that over the generations it's evolved out of them. And I understand that, because the minute you go in the air, you're a pardon the pun, a sitting duck for every avian predator. But what fascinated me about that video, and then also our earlier discussion, is that they will hunker down and they will just cross their little feathered fingers and hope nobody actually gets so close that they almost step on them.
That's right. I mean, we've both been there, and we think, oh my gosh, I mean, that dog's on point. And, maybe the dog's even looking up at you like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, don't you see what I'm seeing? And you're looking at the dog's eyes like, where are you looking? And you walk past and nothing happens. And you turn around and you walk past again and nothing happens. And then, you move on, and then right behind you, that bird flushes.
Oh, I had it not 4 days ago. We got 8 inches to 20 inches of snow around here. And so all the sagebrush bushes basically are little snow-covered caves. And we have a pretty healthy valley quail covey right out behind the place. So my dog is on point looking at one of those. And his back end, his tail is almost brushing another one of those little snow caves. I go in and I'm looking in there and I see nothing in that one he's pointing at. And as soon as I bend down to release him, the birds fly out of the other one.
Aren't they savvy?
Oh, and then, to add icing to that cake, as soon as I release him from that flush to move on, the other bush erupts with 4 more. So that's how unwilling they are to fly.
I don't want to admit this is me, so I'll just say I have a friend that this happens to. But, sometimes a friend can, those birds take off and you get a shot and miss or something. And as soon as, right as you're empty, the 2 closest to you will flush.
Yep.
And before you can reload, it's a far shot. You shoot, you miss. And you think, oh my gosh! And before you can reload, 2 other close ones fly off.
Yep. I always save 1 barrel just in case.
That's right. Yeah.
At least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, me too.
Oh my! That's Dr. Kelly Reyna with Texas A&M University Commerce, principal investigator at the Quail Research Laboratory. I can't wait to talk more about this. We've got a lot more to talk about, and also, I'm going to, let's see, what am I going to talk about? How to doctor your dog is my topic for the Handle It segment this week. So, Kelly, take a moment while I make a couple commercial announcements, and we'll be back with all of that.
Perfect.
We're brought to you in part by landtrust.com. It's kind of like Airbnb. Actually, more like VRBO. Because the guy's not going to be sitting there looking over your shoulder and looking through the keyhole at you at night. Land Trust is a DIY option that focuses on you and your dogs and a safe, high-quality bird hunting experience. They connect the landowners with the hunters. You make a match online. You do all the arrangements right there. Exclusive private land access takes all the stress out of planning your upland hunt. Lets you and your dog focus on what you want to focus on, having a good time, chasing birds. Learn more at landtrust.com. And once you're there, you want to shoot straight, right? So get yourself some TruLock chokes. TRULOCK chokes.com. 2,000 choices, a choke tube for just about any kind of shooting. I tell you, a well-engineered, well-made choke tube will add a bird to your bag every couple of weeks. They got a lifetime warranty and a satisfaction guarantee. Plenty of incentives. Something's always on sale. There's something always available to you when you make the right kind of purchase. Sign up for email notifications on their sales. Before everybody else knows, you'll know. TruLockChokes.com. Dr. Kelly Reyna, Texas A&M Commerce. Back when you were at Nuts U, I didn't think there was a Texas A&M Commerce. Am I right there?
That's right. Yeah, it used to be East Texas State University.
Okay.
And then, were they fortunate to become part of the Texas A&M system. And I say that because, the chancellor of the Texas A&M system, his name is John Sharp. Let me tell you, that guy is a serious bird hunter, and I've just been so fortunate to have a chancellor of that caliber that loves bird hunting and loves this program.
Boy, what are the odds? Only in East Texas,
Right.
I love it, and that does help so much. You ever hunted with him?
Oh, I have, and let me tell you, he doesn't miss at a bird. That guy, he's a crack shot, and he can see them before anybody else. It's just a wonderful experience to go hunting with somebody like that.
I know the feeling. I remember making a show in Kentucky once, and the guy I was with, he knew his shotgun so well. He never looked, like we used to hear it. Maybe it's true. If you're a Marine, send me a note and confirm this. You had to take your, back in the day, it was an AR-15, I think. You had to take it apart, blindfolded or in the dark, and then be able to put it back together. That's what this guy was in the field. And to hunt with somebody like that, you acquire a new level of respect, don't you?
Oh, that's absolutely right. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And, they'll even tell you stories that they only shoot male birds and all this stuff. And then you think, oh, that's a load of, but then you see them do it and you go, oh my gosh, what kind of supersonic brain waves are you processing there? How do you do that? Uh,
That's neat.
I'm a little better than I was at 10. I just don't close my eyes and shoot. But, I don't know if I'm picking out males only.
I know I am. Sure.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I was, and I've alluded to this a couple times. I gave a speech at the Club Épagneul, Breton National Conclave. I think I said it right that time. Club.
I won't be saying that.
While I was there, I was with my good friend Todd Ferris, who runs an operation there called Prairie Prime, and that's where all the field work was done. He's in Oklahoma, and we're driving down one of the trails, and crossing the road is a covey of valley quail. And so we get to talk. He says, I think they're a real good addition here. We can do this, and they survive, blah blah. And then your name came up. So what's a Texan doing with valley quail in Oklahoma?
Boy, I can tell you, if I had $1 for every time that's been asked, I'd have a lot more than a professor's salary. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, that's easy.
You're going to love this story, Scott. We were at a conference, and I looked at the students do poster presentations to kind of give updates on their projects. And I was walking around, and a high school student from Idaho was given a poster presentation at a quail conference. And it said, it discussed a quail nuisance area. And I said, quail nuisance area? What the heck is that? She goes, oh, yeah, in Idaho, the quail are so thick over there that they're eating all the crops of the farmers, and they want them out of there. And I said,
Wow.
I've got to see this place. We have a quail deficit. They have a quail surplus. Seems like we might be able to work out a deal. And so we talked with the farmers out there, and I won't mention his name, but I will tell you, he was complaining about all these quail eating his crops. He said, as soon as the cotyledons come out of the ground, these quail come up and eat them. I need them out of here. And while he was talking, I saw about 2,000 geese land on his crops and start eating all his crops and then take off. I was
he needs a new pair of glasses.
Right. We'll be happy to take care of the quail. At the same time, our chancellor that I mentioned was out in Oregon, and he said, man, I got to tell you, there's some big populations of valley quail out there. They're in like 100 coveys, 100 bird coveys, real neat. And also they just seem to be, more tolerant to humans, and they've been translocated a bunch very successfully. So do you think you can translocate some valley quail to Texas? Do you think you can see if that's feasible? And I said, boy, I think we can do that. So we worked with that quail nuisance area. We trapped 750 wild valley quail, moved them to Texas, and we monitor them. And, we were able to figure out so much that's applicable to all quail species in the U.S.
I bet.
During that. So we just learned a ton about quail and quail translocations, and making that process more, more cost. It's so cost prohibitive, but we try to make it more affordable, more efficient, those kinds of things. But those quail are still around. That was in 2019 and 2020. And those birds are still out in Northeast Texas doing good. We not only showed that it's feasible, but, it worked, and those birds are still out there. So we really learned a lot, and we were even called by the state of California, to say, hey, we're doing a quail project. The quail project that they were doing is out on the Presidio by San Francisco, restoring quail out there. And they said, we're looking for the person that knows the most about California valley quail. We heard your name. I said, well, ain't that
well,
something?
Of course, a Texan knows more about California quail. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've talked with Todd on how to restore quail up in Oklahoma, and of course, or how to get valley quail out in Oklahoma. And of course, it set off a lot of people saying, hey, are you releasing a bird that's not native? Or, there's a lot of pros and cons to all of that. But ultimately, as we've always said, our goal is just to have more hunting experiences to make sustainable quail populations in everything we do. And ultimately gets back to when I was 10 years old. I mean, I want everybody and everybody's grandkids to have that same experience. And so whether it's a valley quail or a bobwhite, I'm just fine with it.
And more power to you, because as I alluded to, and we don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but there are people and organizations that would rather see a quail population die out completely than replanted, if you will.
Absolutely.
And that just strikes me as, well, not a realistic view. But we won't. Here, I want to devote the rest of our Upland Nation podcast to stuff that will help people like me who wish they could hunt quail better. And so let's cover some of the ground that you've picked. You've learned this stuff on purpose and then by default, just being around all this stuff. What are some of the things that quail do that we don't know about? For example, I ask a lot of people this, and you had a pretty good answer when we were preparing for this discussion. I jump those quail out behind my place. They fly out of that little snow cave, and I watch them, and they land over on that pile of rocks. I go right to it, and they are not there. Or are they?
Boy, isn't that the question. I will say two things about that. One is they're probably still there. They're able to shut off their scent system to some extent, right? Because dogs smell, they're like a salmon swimming upstream. A salmon swimming upstream will be out in the sea, and it'll pick up a molecule, and it goes, I'm getting close. It'll pick up another molecule of its home stream and say, I'm getting closer. 10 more molecules, 100,000, hundreds of thousands more, and it's getting closer and closer. And it has that detection of those molecules, and it picks up so much that it says, I'm home.
Yeah.
Well, a bird dog is the same way with a quail. With the quails moving or they're feeding and they're all happy and they have no idea that predators are nearby, they're putting out a lot of scent. And so a dog's able to pick up that and then follow those molecules over to where those quail are. Mm-hmm. And as it gets down from 20 quail down to 1 quail, of course, it gets a little more difficult. We all have those favorite bird dogs that can pick out singles real well. We're so proud of those dogs, but it's a little more difficult. When a bird flies out and lands, number one, it may be running. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying you and I are getting older or anything, but we may go to that spot and it may be gone faster than we are, first off.
Yeah.
But secondly, boy, that bird's able to just get hunkered down, like we mentioned in the Super Quail Project. It puts its camouflage towards the back. It gets very flat where you can't see it, even in 3-inch tall grass. I mean, it's just unbelievable some of the stuff you can flush birds out of. And it won't produce a scent at all. I'm talking about no molecules coming off this bird.
Yeah.
And, we'll see that with dead birds sometimes. There's some dogs that just don't pick up dead birds,
Sure.
They're just not able to find them. And it's just because there's so little scent coming off that bird unless there's some sort of bullet that some sort of shot that's gone through that bird and created more of a scent.
Well, it happens all the time. I remember I actually had the presence of mind to mark it on a GPS. Shot a chucker we couldn't find. Same thing. I marked it. We came back around a half hour later on the way back to the truck. Came in from downwind, and sure enough, by then there had been enough molecules coming off that bird.
That's right.
But speaking of scent and molecules, I've heard all sorts of theories about this stuff. Maybe you can enlighten us. When a dog is smelling a bird, is he smelling exhalations? Is he smelling feathers and dander? Or is he smelling poop?
That's a great question. All the way down to, I believe it was the red grouse, where they determined that, dogs are pretty much smelling little red grouse farts, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I think it's a combination of all of it. The skin puts out these skin sleds, as they call it, which is basically just cells coming off or dander coming off that bird. And that's pretty good. But, that's a little bit heavier, so it's just going to go kind of up and down real quick, But then you have more gaseous stuff, of course, like exhalation and farts, if you will. And so that's going to stick around. You've been in the truck on a hunting trip where you have to roll down the windows.
Yep.
Yep. That's going to stick around a little bit longer than you want, especially if you're a bird. And so the dogs are going to be able to pick up on those gas exchanges a little more and have those molecules in the air a little bit longer than, say, a skin sled or skin cell.
Yeah, and they're already in effect airborne to begin with.
Yeah. And one big upcoming research discipline, if you will, is called like eDNA, and basically just like filter in the air, and you can tell all the animals in the area just by filter in the air.
I love it.
So not unlike a dog.
Well, if we were going to be a better quail hunter, based on what you've learned, what are some things that we should be doing? Whether it's as simple as, figure out which direction the wind is blowing. It could be simple, or it could be something that nobody had thought of, a forehead slapper. What have you learned that could help bad hunters like me?
One of the big things is just on finding birds. So, we see pastures with little bluestem, for example. We did a study here in Texas, at least, and we were trying to detect quail habitat or quail populations from satellites. And so we already knew where the quail populations were because we went and did call counts and mapped all the birds out. And I bet you'd like to have those maps.
I'm not going back for another academic degree just for that.
Oh, I bet you'd pass our upland Gamebird class, though.
Oh, maybe. Is it open book?
It really is.
Oh, I love it.
And so we knew where the quail populations were, and we were able to use satellite imagery to look at the habitat or the different kinds of grasses and all that thing. And man, just almost like clockwork, you could just predict it so well with little bluestem. So here in Texas and Oklahoma area, you were looking for those big pastures of little bluestem. And then one of the questions is, can I go over to a 30-acre pasture of little bluestem and maybe find quail? Or is it going to be do I need to find 1,000 acres of it, or do I need to find 10,000 acres? That's a big question. And so doing a study of how big quail populations are, I found to be very informative. And, those quail populations span over like 250,000 to 400,000 acres kind of thing.
Okay.
I mean, that's a big area. And so what I learned from that and what I'd pass along is you just want to find the biggest area of little bluestem you could find, for example, or our biggest area of habitat. Now, I think your listeners can handle this because I know many of them, they're very savvy hunters, and that's what I like about your show so much. And man, I told you this when we first met, but you just help people become better hunters, and I just love that about you. I love that about your show, and so I think they can handle this. The reason why quails span that many acres, or that while they have to have that much habitat, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people because they've had 100-acre ranches. They've hunted 2,000 acres and said there was plenty of quail there. I think that guy's wrong, But the reason is because no quail wants to have sex with their sister, or their family member, we'll say, and,
or at least admit it.
Or at least admit it. And so the thing with that is every juvenile leaves. They
Yeah.
leave their parents.
Yeah.
Quail are no different than humans. As you get older and you have kids, your kids kind of get frustrated with you, and maybe you get frustrated with your kids, and they want to leave when they become teenagers, and they want to get out on their own, and you kind of are ready for them to get out on your own.
Yeah.
And that's just built in by nature. It's called the major histocompatibility complex. There's no quiz at the end of this, so nobody has to remember that.
So they spread out for genetic diversity.
Yeah, and to get away from self for genetic diversity, they can detect who's related to them just by uncomfortableness or comfortableness.
Really?
So they'll get to the next covey and go, I don't like these people either, and it may be an uncle or something. And then they get down the road a little bit further, and they go, these are my people. And they may be a couple thousand acres down the road or whatever, and say, I'm not related to these people. I'll stay here. And they make a family and do just like we do. So ultimately, the thing I'm saying is it takes a lot of habitat to sustain a quail population. And so I would look for just the biggest chunks of good habitat you can find. And of course, this sounds like, here we go. But that's just one of the best tips I could give is that quail populations needs hundreds of thousands of acres. So just look for the biggest void in the map that you can and hunt that area hard.
And I know you've done a study that you are reluctant to share with everybody. I doubt you'll ever publish it, but it is the phenomenon of millennial quail coming back to the covey at age 35.
That's right.
That was a joke too, everybody. Don't send me an email.
Those are the ones that the older quail throw up in the air when the hunters come.
What about a day in the life of a quail? And it may vary from species to species, but everybody, I'll never forget an old timer saying, go down to that creek at 1:00 and walk this way, and they'll be marching down the hill to the water. And that day he was right. Well, he's never been right since. But is there a routine? Are there some general guidelines about quail behavior that we might need to understand better?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like what we think. There's quail coveys, and they covey up, whether it's covey time or pairing time or whatever. They still kind of covey up. And, we've learned a lot just with trail cameras.
I bet.
Trail cameras out and watching the trail cameras over the months and saying, I see one quail there. Now I see 14 quail. They're coveying up. Now I'm seeing less quail. They must be pairing down, and getting ready for breeding season. And you can learn a lot just from putting the trail camera out in those quail prominent areas. And I just think you can learn so much from there. But one of the things we learned is that they do covey up in the evening for protection. As you know, they put all their butts together and make kind of a quail donut. And, that's how we find those roosts is all their butts are together. We find that scat, a big pile of it across the landscape, which is also, we've done some phenomenal research with that poop. And I think, we can discuss that later too, if you like. But,
it's one of my favorite subjects.
But they, just like we expect, they break up in the morning as soon as the temperature's right, and that's really the key there. We all have those days where we go out in the morning. It's a little foggy, maybe it's a little cooler, and we find no birds on an area that we know that birds should definitely be there. And they just, in those damp, cloudy days, they just hang tight a little longer than normal. They don't go out and feed at the normal 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. It may be noon, maybe 1:00 before they break out of there. They're really, I don't know that they're hoping. I don't know that a quail hopes, but if it does, it's hoping for that cloud cover to break and that sun to come through to warm them up a little bit, to give them a signal that, hey, the daylight's here and it's time to move on.
Yeah.
And without that signal on those cloudy days, they just don't break up out of those coveys as much and don't start moving around to the areas that we expect them to be in.
Well, you probably know Rocky Gutierrez. Now that I think about it, I think everybody knows Rocky. He's one of my go-to quail guys. Helped Aldo Leopold's son write the book on California quail.
And such a good book.
Oh, isn't it though? I'd love to find a copy if anybody has one. But Rocky was also pointing out that, well, as many people know, but maybe not everybody, valley quail roost in trees. And in fact, I was walking back with the dog last night right at dusk, which is too damn early this time of year. But they were already in the trees at about 5:15 in the evening. And you could tell because you'll never see them, but you can hear them talking to each other. I call it muttering. They're just kind of whispering, like this. They're just, hey, are you all right there? You want to come over here? That sort of thing. But they drop out of those trees, Rocky said, and you're saying the same thing. It's not just because the sun has risen. It's the sun plus temperature plus who knows what. Yep.
Yeah, and even barometric pressure plays a big role, and we wouldn't think about that, but that barometric pressure will start putting pressure on their brain, and they get kind of dizzied out, almost like you'll see kind of weird quail. Every now and then we get reports, I saw a bunch of weird quail. We'll look, and the barometric pressure is fluctuating real big time. A storm's coming, or the Arctic front's coming through, or something like that, and we can almost always chalk it up to that to say, oh yeah, they get a little weird when the barometer's fluctuating a lot. And so cloudy days, those misty or foggy days, days seem to play a big role. Of course, the temperature, they're like us. They probably have a hard time getting out of bed on those really cold days. And then barometric pressure. You can look at all those. And there's been studies, but you know what I think we'll do? We'll put out a little, like a tip kit on like a little, just a little help sheet on when quail get up and when they don't as much.
I'd love that. Yeah, that would be fantastic. There's so many questions I would love to ask. We'll do this again, but first, one final quail behavior question. Got a dog on point. We know there's birds somewhere right in front of him, upwind of him, and we're going to walk in on those birds. We want to walk in from the right side, the correct side, and we want to at least begin to set up for a shot in the direction we think the birds will probably fly. Can we do that? Can we make an educated guess about what direction they'll go?
Oh, I think so. Two things to think about. One is they're probably trying to walk, behind you. They're trying to get behind you so that you keep going in your direction and they're going behind you.
Yeah.
So knowing that, that quail have a ground game. They do not want to fly. They do not want to reveal their position. They're going to hold and try to get behind you. So that's one thing to think about. The second thing is a lot like pheasants, they want to fly up into the wind. And so flying into the wind is going to be something to think about too.
Sure.
They have a little bit more control when they fly into the wind. When they fly with the wind, they have a lot less control. And so you'll just see them fly into the wind more than you will see them fly with the wind. It's not absolute, but it's a good rule of thumb.
Well, it's just like an airliner. They always choose the runway that gets them flying into the wind. They get more lift quicker.
That's right. And they know all the aerodynamics. A quail is a savvy pilot. So they have all the aerodynamics figured out, and if they can get that lift, they can get the hell out of Dodge a lot quicker. And then, of course, you and I both know this, and you want to flush them. You want to be on the side of the dog that you have a good shot, and that are away from people and all that. So if you want them to go left, you be on the right side of the dog. If you want them to go right, you be on the left side of the dog.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work, but it sure helps.
Yeah, it's one more obstacle, if you want to call it that. They're not knowingly going to want to fly into a wall, and you're basically a 2-foot wide wall.
That's right.
And plus, you're wielding a firearm. They don't know what it is until it's too late, but I get it. It makes all the sense in the world. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Kelly, Reyna, this has been spectacular. I can't believe I didn't do this until just now. We've got a lot more to cover. I can't wait to get you back with us on the Upland Nation podcast. Learned so much. We'll continue to digest all of that. And don't forget that quail nuisance area. I'm still waiting for the lat long on that. So feel free to text it to me anytime. In the meanwhile, keep up the good work, and I mean that sincerely. And will I see you at Pheasant Fest this year?
Oh, you sure will. We'll
Fantastic.
be at Pheasant Fest, and I can't wait to see you. I thank you for all you do. You sure have made quail hunting and game bird hunting more pleasurable and more informative. And I just appreciate everything, and thank you for having me on today.
It's been my pleasure. I will see you in, where are we this year? Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
That's right.
All right. Safe travels. Happy New Year. Talk to you soon.
You too, Scott. Thank you so much. See you soon.
You're welcome. Wow. I can't wait to talk with him in person. It's been so long. It'll be so fun. And I promise to share it all with you. So if you're not going to Pheasant Fest, just pay attention to the Upland Nation podcast. Go to the social media, and I'll help you there as well. We have my Handle It segment this week is kind of like everything else. I'm getting ready for next season in some ways, and maybe you are too. I'm going to talk about how to get your dog ready for doctoring right after these two messages. First, from MidwayUSA.com. They've got all the ammo you need, whether it's target ammo this time of year, upland ammo, both non-toxic and lead shot. They've got the bismuth that you can't find anywhere else. Customer satisfaction is their number one goal at MidwayUSA.com. Sign up for emails or text messages. You'll get 10% off your next order. Lay in a big pile of ammo for target shooting season. Take 10% off at MidwayUSA.com. And take care of your guns. Hopefully you're doing a little bit of that all the time, but this time of year you might want to give them the once over twice with all the gear and all the materials you need, if you will, at sageandbreaker.com. If you got gun cleaning needs, they've got all the equipment for you. They've got all your storage needs covered, and they've got all the consumables, we say in television, the stuff you use up and have to replace. Firearms grease, cleaning, lubricating, and protection, formulations of all sorts, and most of them are non-toxic. Yeah, clean your shotgun in the living room. No one will complain. Well, that's between you and the family, I guess. But learn more about what they have to offer at sageandbreaker.com. I was just today restocking Flick's big care bag. And I use the term care instead of emergency bag or first aid kit because there's so much more in it than that. But it did bring up something that I hadn't flashed on for quite a while, and our Handle It segment this week is about handling your dog if he gets injured. And I'm not going to give you step-by-step instructions this time. I'm just going to suggest a few things that might help you in the future, starting with your puppy. Teach your puppy to let you handle every bit of him from toenail to nose tip to tail. Practice working on his feet, in between his pads, messing with his nails, looking in his eyes, his nose, and his mouth, and everywhere else. I've talked about counting testicles in the past. Yeah, the dog's got to be comfortable with you doing all of that, and maybe other people as well, if you're doing a hunt test. So teach all that as a puppy when they can't hurt you if they object to your work. Put them on a table or anything else that's off the ground, tailgate, big rock, picnic table, it doesn't matter. And then as he gets older, start introducing the stuff and the tools that you're going to use, whether it's, nail clippers or a Dremel tool, bandages, cotton swabs for his eyes, all those things. He ought to see them, and he ought to see them from a distance and then move them closer and closer to him. Then start touching him with that stuff. Then start practicing all the things you're going to do with that stuff. If it's motorized or it makes a noise, introduce it from way back just like you would introduce a shotgun. I use a spray bottle for a couple different products on wounds in particular. And to a dog, I think that sounds like a snake. Think about it. So introduce that at 10 or 15 feet away and then bring it closer and closer over the course of a few days so that dog understands it's not a snake. It is a bottle with good stuff inside of it. And that should help quite a bit. Practice on the parts he can see first. For example, if you're working on feet, start with one of his front feet. That way he can watch you. He learns to trust you. Those are the things that are important when he is injured and he needs help, and you need him to be as calm as possible. And finally, this always worked for our horses, and it works for dogs as well. If they are not calm, cover their eyes with a bandana or with a jacket or something like that. Put that over their head, and they will simmer down just a little bit. Bottom line, practice your dog's doctoring when he doesn't need it. Yeah, the Handle It segment this week brought to you by two of my good friends and supporters, ESPAmerica.com. I'm now using their ear protection in the field and at the range. Digital, custom fit. They stay in. They're comfortable. No wind noise. I can hear the birds. I can hear the dog's collar tags. Learn more about getting your own pair at ESPAmerica.com. And at Mid-Valley Clayson Shooting School, not only can you learn to be a better wing shooter, you can stock up on shotguns. They've got all the sub-gauges you're looking for, every one of them, 20, 28, 410, always in stock. They've got a selection that can't be beat, and if they don't have it, they've got a pipeline that a lot of dealers don't have to some of the manufacturers. They can probably find it if anybody can. If you're looking for a unique or special edition Browning, they've got the Satori Maple in stock. They've got the Satori Medallion in stock. Learn more, shop around at midvalleyclays.com. Well, thanks, Dr. Kelly Reyna, for the insights on quail behaviors, among other things. And sure appreciate your career change. You're doing a lot of good for all of us. Well, you were anyway in the U.S. Navy. Anchors away and all that jazz. And thank you all as well, especially if you contributed something to the discussion this week, whether it was your shooting skills or lack thereof, or any of the other topics we cover at the social media that I share here. If you left a rating, I sure appreciate that. And if you will please spread the word just to one person, invite them to listen to the Upland Nation podcast. We're made possible by Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Pointer Shotguns, Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, ESPAmerica.com Hearing Protection, Mid-Valley Clayson Shooting School, TrueLock Jokes, MidwayUSA.com, and LandTrust.com. Of course, this discussion never ends at the social media and also at FindBirdHuntingSpots.com. I'll see you there until I see you in the field, and maybe next time I see you, we'll be at Pheasant Fest. I'm Scott Linden. Thanks for listening to the Upland Nation podcast.